Welcome back to the Napoleon Hill 17 Universal Principles of Success. And on this exciting program, we'll be discussing and uncovering in great depth Napoleon Hill's Lesson 10 entitled Accurate Thinking. It is our great pleasure and honor of introducing our dynamic panel of guests, and they are John Patrick Hickey, Nido Qubein, and Vic Conant. John Patrick Hickey is an author, speaker, and trainer. He's also the author of Daily Thoughts, 90 Daily Readings for Success-Minded People. His newest book, All You Have Is Now, How You Approach the World Determines Your Destiny, has just been released. John is also certified in DIS assessments and a certified life and business coach. John first read Think and Grow Rich in the 1970s while he was in direct sales, and he reread it in the 80s, and while a part-time producer at a radio station, applied the principles this time and became a program director shortly thereafter. Later, John read Law of Success by Hill and started keeping a journal based on the 17 principles and how he could apply these principles to his life, and he still uses that journal to this very day. And joining John Patrick Hickey is Dr. Nido Qubein, who came to the U.S. from the Middle East as a teenager with little knowledge of English, no contacts, and only $50 in his pocket. Well, today you can find him as he serves as president of High Point University, a position that he's held since 2005. In addition, the Qubein Foundation has granted more than 700 scholarships worth more than $6 million. As a business leader, he's the chairman of Great Harvest Bread Company with 220 stores in 43 states. He also serves on the board of B&B&T, Lazy Boy Corporation, and Dots, an Irving Place Capital Portfolio company. Dr. Qubein is the youngest person ever inducted into the International Hall of Fame and is the founder of the prestigious National Speakers Foundation in Phoenix, Arizona. He has been the recipient of many, many honors, including the Ellis Island Medal of Honor, the Horatio Alger Award for Distinguished Americans, and the Cavett Award for Professional Speaking. He's written 11 books. Dr. Qubein earned a BA from High Point University and MS from University of Carolina and received honorary doctorates from all three of his alma maters. He first became aware of Napoleon Hill when he read Think and Grow Rich, and it made a major impact on his thinking with substantive contributions to the way he founded his businesses. And thirdly, and equally, joining us is Vic Conant, who is the chairman of Nightingale Conant Corporation, the premier publisher of audio personal development programs in the world. Vic has had the great fortune of growing up and surrounded by works of the modern-day legends of motivation, such as Napoleon Hill, Earl Nightingale, Dale Carnegie, Norman Vincent Peale, just to mention a few. After graduating from the University of Michigan and a tour duty in Vietnam, Vic eventually joined the family business as it was pioneering the modern self-improvement publishing industry. Nightingale Conant would go on and publish the who's who of business and self-improvement, and there's no doubt that our guest, Vic Conant, has worked with more self-improvement authors than anybody alive today. So with that said, gentlemen, welcome to the program on Accurate Thinking.
Good to be here.
Thank you very much.
It's just a real honor and a joy. This promises to be an enriching session. And I guess the first question we can go with is so very basic but important, and that is, what is accurate thinking? And John Patrick, perhaps we could start with you.
Accurate thinking is, in the simplest form, to think correctly. It's right thinking. Hill, in The Laws of Success, said that there were really two fundamentals that you had to have for accurate thinking. One was to be able to separate fact from information, because we got lots and lots of information out there, but not all of the information we get is factual. I don't think anybody can argue with that. There's a lot of information that floats around that's not factual at all. And then to be able to separate that fact from what's important and what's unimportant, what is relevant to you, what's irrelevant. It's having that ability to get your thoughts correct, to have the facts, and to think the right way about those facts.
Fabulous insight. And Nido, you're certainly no stranger to accurate thinking. It certainly must have taken a lot of that to get you to the place you are today. Could you give us your insights?
Well, listen, I am grateful to the very notion that I understand that all good things come from your set of beliefs, and that all good things stem out of your mindset, and that your mindset must be based on reason, not just emotion, and that all that we accomplish in life and we seek to have in life and to do in life is dependent on what it is that we put inside of our mind, both conscious and unconscious, and we act upon those ideas with vigor and with conviction and with faith, because we believe it and because we believe that it is important, noble, successful. And so my entire life from the very beginning, having come to America as a 17-year-old college kid with nothing really material to my name, but yet I came with everything that is needed to charge off with conviction that in America I could make something of my life. And so accurate thinking and critical thinking and understanding that facts are at the heart of how you make decisions and how you find solutions and how you decipher the important from the urgent. All of these are fundamental notions that lead to strength in one's leadership and that give birth to one's managerial effectiveness and that lead to the achievement of one's goals. So we are discussing today a very, very important ingredient that leads to any person's, really, regardless of what sector they're in or what business they're in, what age they're in. All of that, it stems from the mind, as we all know.
Absolutely. Thoughts are things, as Napoleon Hill pointed out, and you said so much that we can just draw from that, and we will as the session goes on. Thank you, Nido, for providing that. Vic, from your understanding of reading and being exposed to Napoleon Hill's work, what's your definition of accurate thinking?
First of all, I think the three of us were lucky that we got the best of the 17 principles. And I think Hill said that it's the most important principle, it's the most interesting principle, and also the most difficult to use. And it's behind every product that we produce at Nightingale Kona. Every great author talks at the base of their material, it has to be thinking. And when you think about it, our bodies are like these huge, wonderful machines that can do anything, but they're just sitting in idle until our minds tell it what to do. And it's our thinking that determines whether we go into a ditch or whether we go to the moon. And so I think it's the foundation of all of Hill's material. And one of my favorite things about it was that he defined how to think about accurate thinking so well. If what you're thinking doesn't benefit mankind and if it doesn't contribute to your definite purpose, then it's not an accurate thought and you can just disregard it. I thought that was a great insight, and it makes it easy to decipher, am I thinking accurately or not thinking accurately.
And accurate thinking is what leads to ideas, and ideas is what leads to action, and action is what leads to results. So when we think of it from that perspective, why it makes it really significant that we birth the opportunity for accurate thinking, that we learn the systems that lead to it, that we reside in a place that encourages it. As you know, I am president of High Point University in High Point, North Carolina. I work every day with 4,000 students and 1,200 faculty and staff. It's the business we're in, to create an environment where our students can evolve, develop, and grow in an environment for accurate thinking. Shy of that, they would make the right conclusions, they would not have the right ideas, they would not achieve their goals in life, they would not climb to the zenith of their hopeful potential, and yet living in that zone of accurate thinking leads to all the good things that all of us as humans wish to have, and that enlightened self-interest suggests is part and parcel of what we ought to follow in our own existence and our own destiny.
You know, I feel that both Nido and Vic have hit on real important fact of accurate thinking, and that is the ability to think. That believing, that knowing what the truth is and where you're going. You know, Nido mentioned coming to the country and knowing that he can succeed here. There's a lot of people who believe, in a sense, they believe lies. They believe things that are not true. I guess that's the information that Hill talked about, where we're told things are too hard, the economy's too hard, life's too hard, you're too young, you're too old, you're the wrong gender, you don't have enough money, you don't have enough education. You get all these things that come in, and accurate thinking is to know what it is, what that chief aim in life is for you, and believing that, yeah, I can do this. That the truth is, I can succeed. Many people have succeeded before me with less resources than what I have. And yes, I can do this. I can succeed. I believe that this is possible. And it's getting that thinking process going to where we do think, where we do have those ideas, where we're willing to risk and to look at things from the broader perspective of exactly how we can succeed and better the world that we're living in. If things aren't working well, we got the power to create an environment that is better if we believe that that's so.
And I think that's why Napoleon Hill makes the point about faith, about the notion that creative thought is largely dependent on faith. And I believe he meant faith in its purest form, that when you have faith and when you have courage, when you have faithful courage, you're much more likely to act on the ideas. People come up with more ideas by noon every day than they can do in a lifetime. That's not what's important. What is important is what we do with them, and it takes accurate thinking that stems from the faith that you can make it happen, that you have this expectation of attainment in your own life, and you pursue it with vigor, and you pursue it with purpose and passion.
That is tremendous. And I guess there is a little bit of intimidation and confusion, because a lot of successful people have been approached by others and said, "You're crazy." To be thinking of that. Walt Disney, Edison, I think some of his friends even had him brought to a psychiatrist. How do you know whether... Is that a good thing, Vic? People call you crazy.
Well, a lot of it is your commitment level, and I think no one but you can understand that commitment. When Nido and John talk about faith, there's a big difference between 99 and 100%. And the guys that aren't 100% committed to what they're doing, they're the ones that are going to see what you're doing and not see the value of it and try to possibly degrade where you're going. And it's only you, and if you've gone through the definition of accurate thinking, decided this is the way you want to go, it's that faith, as Nido said, it's that 100% commitment that makes the difference between those who make it and those who don't, and get discouraged by those who are always going to be out there.
And that's exactly right, Vic. And Napoleon Hill said it best. He said, you can be anything you want to be if only you believe with sufficient conviction and act in accordance with your faith. For whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can indeed achieve. That's the whole point, isn't it?
That is so fabulous. And then as we draw, there's an old adage or proverb that says, there is a way that seems right to a man, but the end is destruction. And so many of us perhaps may think that we're thinking correctly, but we're not. How does somebody know whether their thinking is really sound and accurate?
I think Vic hit on that before when he was talking about how Hill mentions that thing that you're going after. You ask yourself, is this benefiting the world? Is this helping someone other than me? I think that selfish motivations are destructive motivations, because we aren't the center of the universe. We'd like to think that we are, but we're not. And other than one person, the world is made up of everybody else. And we have to be able to understand it. Our passions, our desire, our motivation, our actions are to make things better, to make the world better. Even by making me better, I'm helping make the world better, because we're all part of everything. So if I'm living a life and working towards achieving and developing myself to be a better person who has something to contribute, who's going to add value to the world that's around me, then I'm helping other people. If all I'm focused on is me, what I'm going to get out of this, and how I can help me, then that only is going to be destructive. Selfishness always leads to destruction. There is no redeeming benefit in being a selfish person.
Tremendous insight. So I guess the next question, maybe Nido, you can take that. How does one begin to establish a foundation for accurate thinking? Is it a complicated thing?
Is it a complicated thing? I don't think so. Is it a simple thing? I don't think so. I think it is dependent on one's desire to acquire it and then to make it part and parcel of one's life. I do think that, again, the lesson pretty much tells us what to do, and that is to separate facts from mere information, to then take those facts and put them into two classes, namely the important and the unimportant, the relevant and the irrelevant. So I think the key is not necessarily to be too philosophical about it, but to be very pragmatic and practical and to say, look, is this relevant or irrelevant? Am I thinking in the right direction? Is my faith focused in the right pathway? And to understand that through habituation, good things come to be too. So if I do it well enough and long enough and I hang around people who believe in that too and they act in that way, it will rub off on me too, and it will become part of my subconscious and unconscious mind in ways that I can achieve better better things and deeper things. If you look at successful people, they seem to come in 2 or 3 categories, really. Those individuals who use faithful courage and who have accurate thinking and who pursue their desires in life with clarity and with determination. And they seem to do well regardless what sector they're in and where they may be placed and what are the obstacles that they meet or the pitfalls that they experience. Then you see people who will succeed occasionally when things are right, when the environment is conducive, when there isn't much headwind that is keeping them from moving onwards and upwards. And they'll succeed at one thing, but they can't replicate it. It's almost like the difference between productive failures and unproductive successes. It's like you fail, you learn from it, you become better, your accurate thinking becomes honed and more specific and more incisive. And the other is when you succeed and you don't know how you succeeded, why you succeeded, and have a difficult time replicating it. Which is why I think the subject is so important, that accurate thinking is the heart of it all. It is the foundation, it's the cornerstone that then defines and dictates in many ways the ways that we act. And as Napoleon Hill said, it isn't what we do so much as it is what we become. What we do is not as important as who we are and what we become.
Mm-hmm. So eloquently said, Nido, as you always do. I think there's a parable or a quote that says, watch your thoughts because they become your words, watch your words because they become your actions, watch your actions because they become your habits, and watch your habits because they become your destiny. And Vic, your whole company is based on thinking, isn't it? Could you add to what John, Patrick, and Nido have shared?
Well, that's certainly true. As I was saying earlier, it's the foundation piece of our whole, you might say, industry of every success is accurate thinking, is the power of thinking, is your ability to control your thinking, which I think is so critical in a human being's life, whether they take control of their thoughts. And if you're having at all trouble doing that, you have the perfect resource here with Napoleon Hill's principles, and he just gives you the step-by-step guide, as Nido and John have said, and have followed in their own lives. And so many of our authors have followed Hill's principles, and it's just such a great guide. I was struck when I was restudying Hill's material how sound it is, and it reminded me of how valuable it is to, as we call it, re-listening or recommitting yourself to a product, or if it's been a while since you read or listened to Napoleon Hill, it's such a great reminder to re-listen to the product, whether it be this recording that we're all making or Napoleon Hill's books. It's a lifetime companion, something that needs to be referred to often.
Tremendous. And on that note, how important is it to do perhaps a regular evaluation of oneself, perhaps a daily inventory or review, in order to clear your mind and your emotions? Nido, you said something very interesting, is accurate thinking is to separate yourself from emotions. And so much of what we do is emotionally based.
Well, we're human beings.
Yeah.
That's the natural thing. That's the natural byproduct that would happen to a human being. But natural is not always best. If it were, life would be very, very easy, and nobody would have to learn or induce their mind, their heart, or their soul with anything that is new or leads to a more learned position. The reality of it is that we all should take a recess to reassess. Reassess who we are, what we do, what's working, what's not working. Why did this lead in this way? Did I use the wrong facts to lead to this conclusion? Did I deduce this in the wrong way? Or did I use merely facts to come to this conclusion, and therefore I was devoid of the human spirit that says, I can, I will, I can make something happen if only I take a risk or two. I mean, that's the other thing, is that the good thing about having faith is that you have the strength with which to take some risks. You take risk out of life, you take opportunity out of life. You can't find me an entrepreneur who started something, did something, built something, who didn't at some point counter some risk, or did not even sometimes enter something knowing that inherent in that decision or that action there may be some risk. The issue here is not risk avoidance, it is risk management. So maturity of a human being allows the person to be more sound in the way they approach a matter vis-a-vis risk and risk-taking. But the reality of it is, it's also about confidence. I mean, faith gives you confidence. And yes, we can make the argument that confidence comes from competence. When I know what I'm talking about, when I'm skilled enough, when I'm experienced enough, I can talk about a subject, I can approach a problem, I can be a part of a team and bring forth notions that make sense because I'm confident. I know the material. But more important than that is that competence leads to confidence, but confidence leads to something significantly more important, which is commitment. And commitment, therefore, leads to making something happen. It leads to someone saying, I want to be extraordinary. I want to have a vision that leads me to better and bigger things. I want to serve the world. I don't want just to have success. I want to have significance. I don't want it simply to be secular. I want it to be spiritual. Whatever the situation may be, I do think we have to take a recess to reassess. I think intelligent and wise human beings allow themselves to examine what they do and how they do it, and then not stop there, but improve it, build upon it, learn from it, enhance it, and come to a position that says, I can now help other people to do the same. And that's what you do when you build a company, build a team, start an initiative, is that you build a team of people who collectively can light a candle and change the world.
So fascinating how you incorporate a great many of the other principles into accurate thinking. They just seem to stream in and out of each other.
But don't you think that's necessary? I mean, there's a reason why there is more than one lesson, right? There's a reason for that. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's the ability of one to build balance among all of these that therefore can lead to sustainable and lasting success.
Absolutely. And John, Patrick, you being a pastor, one of the daily prayers a lot of people look at in terms of assessment is doing, for instance, praying out the Lord's Prayer. How important is it to assess your moral inventory in order to create a foundation for accurate thinking?
Well, I think it's essential. I mean, if we're living outside of our values, then we're not going to get very far. It's part of the elements that make pursuing your chief aim work is the fact that that aim is consistent with your value system. And you have to be able to be faithful to that and having that value system. And I was thinking while you were just talking about taking the time to evaluate, and I think one of the best habits I developed in life was when I was 18, I began to journal. And I journal every day. And I have journaled since I was 18. I'm now 63, so I've got a few of them behind me. But what that does is it allows me to go back, and when I'm going through either a struggle, a challenge, or trying to make a decision, trying to gather the right information that I need in order to think accurately, I can go back and I can look at where I've been before. Because we follow patterns in life. I mean, there's a lot of the decisions that we made before. And I see what works, I see what doesn't work. You know, Nido was talking about looking at what works, what doesn't work, how can I make this better. And that allows me to do that from my own life experience in saying, this is how I handled this, and I can remember what worked and what needed to be different and what needed to be changed. And I use those resources often. I use the resources of my faith. As a person of faith, I believe that my chief aim is my purpose. This is the reason that I was put here on this planet. I don't believe that anybody was ever created that does not have a divine purpose, something that we are here to contribute, to help the world as a whole. And those purposes are good. Does everybody follow them? No. Does everybody use them properly? No. But the fact that others may not doesn't excuse me from knowing that I have to. And that's where my value system is, and that is the resource I have in moving this forward.
Tremendous insights. And going to you, Vic, how much of our mental resources, our brain power, our thought power, have you been able to assess that we use? That's really what your company is all about, is really drawing from that and providing.
Well, I mean, that's a hotly debated subject. I think we all conceive that it's a very small amount. And that's why listening to something like this, or you can get the insights of great people like John and Nido and yourself and all the other authors coming on is so important. One of the great things about our minds is that we forget. We forget our challenges, we forget our failures, and it allows us to recuperate and to go on. However, it also allows us to forget the good things about our successes, what caused us to become successful. And that's one of the great things about our programs and the great things about listening to mentors like Napoleon Hill and Nido and John and yourself is your ability to constantly be reminded of the principles that brought you success in the past or will bring you success in the future if you follow them.
I think Vic is absolutely right. I do think that all of us as human beings can become so engaged and involved in the dailiness of life that we forget sometimes that the mind can be controlled and guided and directed to do constructive things, but just as easily it can be directed towards destructive things, and we really have to make sure that our subconscious mind is focused on the right way, that accepts and focuses on the constructive, not the destructive, whether it comes from the outside world or whether it's something that comes from within. And so it's easy. You see people sometimes who are doing very well, and all of a sudden they get off track. They misdirect their destination, and then they wonder why something didn't work. And then you take a careful look at the steps taken and the mindsets that were followed and whether or not accurate thinking was at the heart of what they were doing. And you begin to analyze that, no, it isn't something that one simply implants in one's mind and it's going to work forever without some continued nurture, without some continued direction and focus, and without a directed interest that says, I want to have accurate thinking, I must constantly work in that direction, and I will keep myself determined to have this kind of faith and to be focused on constructive things and work at it. I don't know of anybody who just pushes the automatic button and it happens that way. It may seem that way. Truly successful people make things look easy. Celine Dion can get on the stage and sound like she's just opening her mouth and sounding beautiful. Nobody sees the practice that she may go through, or the mental process, or the subconscious thoughts, or the faithful courage that she may pursue. And so that's what's so beautiful. I mean, that's what really makes it all worthwhile. That's why this discussion leads to good things, that if we want to make good things happen in our life, then we must follow a certain set of procedures, of concepts that can make us better people and can direct us in the right way. Hence, I hope, is what this session is all about.
It reminds me of a fellow that I met. I went to Malaysia with the Napoleon Hill Foundation, and on this trip was a fellow named Joe Dudley, and we were flying together along, and he pulled out Think and Grow Rich and was starting to read it, and we got in a discussion. He said, I've read Think and Grow Rich 300 times, and yet he was pulling it out as we were sitting on an airplane. He just pulled it out automatically to remind himself of the principles. He never took it for granted. He always, just like Celine doing her routine, this was his routine, and he was a self-made man that was a multimillionaire, and you can just see how it came about, following these principles and staying with it.
Yeah. Hey, Vic, Joe Dudley is one of my best buddies. Joe Dudley and I are inducted in the Horatio Alger Association for Distinguished Americans. I see him with some frequency. I've known him for years and years. He built a wonderful business that created and designed and marketed hair products and others, especially in the ethnic marketplace. And what he told you is the truth. This man genuinely believes that you have to prescribe in your life the elements that work. And much like taking a bath every day or nourishing your body with food every day, your mind, too, has to be fed in ways that can lead to good things. So I know Joe well, and what he told you is something he does indeed live with every day.
He's a lovely man.
Well, you'll be all pleased to know that Joe Dudley is on the lesson of the Mastermind Alliance, lesson 2, with also your good friend Don Hudson, Nido.
Yeah, indeed. I tell you, there are a lot of good people out there. You somehow are finding them all, Phil.
Oh, well, you're all magnetic. It's beautiful to have that. Well, how can somebody reinforce the process of accurate thinking on an ongoing basis? John Patrick, would you like to comment on that?
A lot of it is habit. I mean, reading Think and Grow Rich 300 times is just as when I was mentioning about writing in my journal every day since I was 18 years old. There are things that become habit, and they're good habits. They're healthy habits. These are things that help develop us and grow. Accurate thinking, good positive thinking, right thinking is a habit that we create we do it on a consistent basis all the time. You remove the negative thoughts. You don't dwell on the things that are not true because they have no benefit to you. Instead, you're going to accurately think and fit those things which are true, the possibilities that are there, having those ideas, allowing yourself to think through things. You develop these kind of habits in your life to where it's almost at a point where what you do is natural to you, that this is something you're going to do. I'm sure that this gentleman's not just on the plane, that when he has that time to pull out the book, he pulls out the book and he reads it. It's not a case of, well, I got to do this, I got to do this. It's what he does. It's people who think accurately, who have those positive, empowering thoughts, who are developing their passions and their desires. You do it so often, it becomes a habit. It's not something you have to keep reminding yourself of. Now, I don't want to make it sound like it's just something that occurs without any thought, because it does take thought. It's a deliberate action, but it's a habit. It's something that you're always doing. Accurate thinking becomes a habit when you do it on a consistent basis, and you know that this is what you need to do.
Tremendous, and thank you so much, John Patrick. And Nido, you've accomplished so much. Were you just born an accurate thinker?
I don't know the answer to that question. I've never figured out if people are really born with tendencies, shall we say, that may be more receptive than others. I don't know the answer to that. Here's what I do know, though, that the beliefs that we have seem to lead to the behaviors that we display, and the behaviors that we display seem to lead to the results that we get. And if those results are good and successful and lead to productive ends, then, of course, they lead to even more beliefs. They feed right back into our subconscious mind saying, hey, you can do it. You've tried it and it worked and you can do more of it. That's why you see successful people becoming more successful. That's why you see sometimes people who fail and get scared of it and are afraid of it become hesitant to try it again or to move in that direction. And yet failure is part and parcel of life. It is, in fact, a necessary part of life. It makes us stronger and better and more deliberate and more determined. So that's what I know. Now, the question becomes, how do we develop those beliefs? And I believe that part of the answer to that, at least, is coaching. That we all have to have coaches in our life, heroes, models, mentors, who can help us and guide us. And sometimes those coaches are the books we read, hence our discussion today. Sometimes it is the seminars we attend. Sometimes it is the CDs that you get from Napoleon Hill. Sometimes they are the sermons you hear or the lessons that you comprehend. We can get it in all forms and from all directions. The point is we have to be open to it. So people who are coachable tend to do things well. My mother used to say to me, always learn from the experts, because the experts have their knowledge in order. Because if your knowledge is not in order, then the more of it you have, the more confused you become. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I tell our students at High Point University, I said, who you spend time with is who you become. What you choose is what you get. How you change is how you succeed. Life is not complex. We make it so. Life is about understanding that you are created for a purpose and that you can make amazing things happen. You can help so many people in the process. You can bring joy and happiness to your heart, and you can benefit from the results, and you should celebrate your achievements too. But it all begins with a desire that says, I am somebody and I will become the person God intended for me to become, and I will work hard and smart to make good things happen. And along the path of life, I will extend my arms and hold the hands of others who may want to travel that journey with me. And in a sense, that's what Joe Dudley was doing when he talked to Vic and said, listen, I've done this 300 times. In a sense, he was extending his hand and saying, look, that's what works for me. And he may have said that, Vic, to a lot of other people, and in the process may have helped some, just like Vic does. You know, I ought to tell you that I've been published by Napoleon Hill, and this isn't about a business. This is about the millions upon millions of people across America and the world whose hearts have been warmed and their minds have been matriculated because They listen to substantive material that can enrich us as we move onwards. I mean, this is what it's all about. Garbage in, garbage stays. Wisdom in, wisdom stays. And so life is best lived in balance, and part of that balance is intellectual, part of it is spiritual, part of it is physical, part of it is familial or social or even economic. But it is balance, and accurate thinking suggests with clarity that people who live in balance and people who live with a determined notion of faith and direction seem to do well in life, and they do it on and again and again. And when they don't do well, they seem to have the strength and the power to try again, which therein lies really the beauty of life, that you have the strength and the accurate thinking that says, I can try again. This isn't the end. This is just a station along the journey.
Nido said something that was so great on finding a mentor. And, of course, today I think we're all trying to say that Napoleon Hill is kind of the star mentor. I think he's probably made more millionaires than any other person that's ever lived through his principles. But if a person is out there looking for that mentor and hasn't found one yet, I think you need to look no farther than right here with this great man who studied thousands of people and came up with these principles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How can we begin to mine? Psychologists, research indicates that we're only scratching a small fraction of our mental and physical resources. How can we begin mining the true potential of our thoughts and of our brain and begin obviously applying that?
I think part of it is just setting the time apart to study. So many people are so busy, and our lives are so busy today, and yet someone I heard said, turn off your TV and turn on your life. Mm-hmm. And I've adopted that, turn off your radio and turn on your life. If you look carefully, you can find the time, but you need to set aside, I think, the time to do your, as Joe Dudley does, either reading, listening, whatever you prescribe to. You have to set aside that personally I get up and set an hour aside first thing in the morning and study what's important to me. But you have to have that time set aside, otherwise it's gone and it's lost.
I think that really is the key, having that time that you study, that you're feeding yourself, that you're growing, reading. I once read a statistic, and I don't have it in front of me, I don't remember the exact number, but there was a really shocking percentage of people who they surveyed that after they graduate from college, don't read another book. And, I mean, to me, I'm an avid reader, my wife's an avid reader, my kids are avid readers. I just can't imagine surviving without reading. But reading, listening, feeding yourself good stuff that's going to move you forward. I'm not against television, I'm not against movies or entertainment. It has its place. But that's the thing to remember, is those things have their place. The thing that should be preeminent in our life is learning, development, growth. We have to take time, and we put time aside to do certain things, and we all have the same amount of time. My main emphasis in my last book is looking at the fact that no one has any more time than anybody else. No one has any less. So if you're all looking at 24 hours in a day, why are some people successful and some not? Well, it's because successful people take action. They use their time. And part of that time has to be in development, in looking at ourselves and feeding ourselves the right stuff and growing. And the resources that are available in books, in audio programs, in seminars, in just talking with people who have succeeded and who have learned. I truly have not come across somebody who can't teach me something. A lot of people don't learn because they don't listen. And you have to be able to constantly be feeding yourself and growing and learning. When you do that, then you start moving forward at an incredible pace, because you're giving yourself the energy, the fuel to move forward. You're not wasting that time and giving yourself things that either are going to take you down, make you depressed, feed you negative thoughts, convince you that you can't move forward, or just give you nothing, like eating junk food. You got to feast on the good stuff. And you can enjoy your candy bar and your cookies at different times. I'm not saying you can't have them, but you got to feast on the good stuff if you want to move forward.
As a man thinketh, so is he. As I believe the Proverbs 23:17 quotes. Well, this has just been a wonderful time together, and just providing some rich insights. In closing, if there was one jewel of insight, one takeaway that someone can begin applying today, what would that be? And with that said, perhaps we'll just go around the metaphoric table, so to speak, and in doing so, maybe you could let our listeners know where they can learn more about you, your organization, and what you offer. And Vic, perhaps we can start with you.
I guess I would say that the whole area originally mentioned is faith, and you've got to start. And when you start on the process of accurate thinking and start on the process of working on your definite purpose, you have to have the commitment and the faith to go on. I think by practicing the 17 principles, you've got them all here. You've got the great authors telling you how to do it, like these great men here today. And so I would just use the resource you've got right in front of you. It's a gold mine right in front of you. And as far as our company, nightingale.com, come to our website. We'd love to have you.
Well, thank you so much, Vic, and there's no shortage of specialized knowledge and accurate thought coming from your organization. That's a one-stop place for such tremendous array of thinking and accurate thinking, for that matter. Thank you so much for being on the program. John Patrick?
Well, I think that you touched on a very important thing when you said with the one takeaway thing, something you can do right now, and I believe that that's the real key, is to do something right now. Is to not leave listening to this program or any of the programs or any of the things that we learn, any of the audio programs or books we read. Everything should inspire us to action. If all we're doing is taking in the information and not using it, then we're misusing it. There is an abundance of resources that are out there, good stuff. But you got to take it in and you got to actually apply it. Accurate thinking, in a sense, demands action, that you use the stuff that you're given. So take action, do something, put it into practice. You can read Think and Grow Rich 800 times, but if you don't do it, you're not going to benefit from it. It's the doing that makes it different, that makes it more than just reading a book. You have to put these things into action. And as for getting in touch with anything that I do or we offer, you can go to my website, which is johnpatrickhickey.com. All of it is right there and available to whoever wants to go there.
Wonderful. Thank you, John Patrick, and for reminding us that the great purpose and aim of education is not knowledge, but action. It's been a real blessing having you on. And Nido, take us home.
Well, I think the main takeaway for me is the whole notion of autosuggestion, that the mind records suggestions and sort of invokes the aid of infinite intelligence in translating these suggestions into the natural physical form. And so autosuggestion states with clarity, I think, that when we least expect it, these ideas could enter our mind, or any idea could enter our mind, and can influence our thinking and make it accurate thinking or inaccurate thinking. And so I believe being aware of who we are, where we are, who we hang around with, what we read, what we inject our mind and our being with are primary concerns and ought to be fundamental areas that we focus on. So if you want to be great, you're going to have to hang around great people. You want to be successful, hang around successful people. You want to be positive, hang around positive people. And by hanging around them, I don't mean just physically. I mean some of the great minds we may not be accessing in person, but we can access them in print or in recording form or through other media. At High Point University, I teach a freshman class to every freshman who comes to our school, and then I teach a senior class before they graduate. And in these two classes, I try to focus with clarity on principles that can allow these students to become all that they can become, to climb the highest mountain, to be extraordinary, to believe in the art of the possible, to understand that they're meant to do something worthwhile with their life, and that they can indeed, through accurate thinking, they can indeed direct themselves positively, or they can go the other direction too. It doesn't take that long for someone to stray away into territory that is not useful or meaningful or purposeful. And then for the seniors, you're about to graduate. You're about to enter the world. You're about to initiate something. You're about to build something. And just know that there are a million people in the world who can do what you can do. What makes you so special? What makes you so differentiated? What makes you so distinctive? So this isn't about just some motivation or some inspiration. This is about the very fiber of who we are as human beings. This is about building a future that's laden with meaning. This is about having purpose at the heart of who we are and how we exist and what we stand for and what we will do and how we will be. And so for me, it is a way of life. It is not a matter of reading because it's good to read, fun to read, listen because it's fun to listen, or we can pick up some ideas. It is rather to give birth to the very being of a human. Who are you and who will you become, and what is infiltrating your world, and how are you framing it in ways that can be really, really good for you and, by extension, good for all those who will cross your path. And High Point University, by the way, can be reached at highpoint, highpoint.edu, and all of my materials, including a lot of free stuff that people can download and enjoy and play with, can be found at Nido, Nido, Nido Q as in Nido Qubein.com. At the end, my friend, life is what we make it. And that's what I believe Napoleon Hill was trying to tell us all. Life is what you make it, and so make it count.
Nobody says it better than you, Nido, and your life is an illustration of that great, great statement. Well, Vic, John Patrick, and Nido, it's been a tremendous blessing. Thank you for the expression of your generosity and your wisdom on this program of Accurate Thinking. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.